Hello, my happy Crumpin' Wargamers. Welcome back to another episode of Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. Today we actually have some really interesting news. So we have a potential source of the Data Slate. This was leaked on Reddit, and most of the times when I look at these things, I tend to think that they are garbage and useless. But this one has some interesting things in it that honestly makes me think that this could be potentially real. Now, I have no actual knowledge of whether or not this is real, but these are actually all pretty reasonable changes. And the only issue I have with the changes is that most of them don't quite go far enough. But overall, it's pretty darn logical that this would be a reasonable change that Games Workshop could make to the game in order to make everything more balanced and more fair. So let's hop right on into it. First off, we have some universal changes, and I actually am a big fan of one of these in particular. You can see that we have a very sad-looking Nurgling right there. Essentially, what the Data Slate suggests is that all OC0 units will no longer be able to do actions, and I am here for it. This is something that I am 100% for. No more Spore Mines guaranteeing free secondaries. No more spamming Nurglings to do area denial and do all the things for every other army. No more spamming Ripper Swarm. It's just nonsense. All what the OC0 units can do. It's actually very toxic and bad for the game. So I'm very excited to get rid of those OC units, just basically guaranteeing free secondary points. That doesn't mean they're not still good. That doesn't mean they don't still have their purpose, but they're not auto-includes in your armies anymore. And then there's another one that says all rhinos at plus 10 points. I think that's a very silly change. It makes almost no sense to me, but I also don't think it really impacts the game in any meaningful way at all. So, I don't have much else to say. So let's talk about some of the changes that are going to be very codex specific. Necrons. All right, the first thing that Necron's changer is going to get is they are going to have a 10-point increase on all Satan. Now this, I'm 100% for. The Satan are much too cheap, and they are much too efficient for their points cost. What they give you for 255 points for the Nightbringer is absolutely ludicrous, and increasing their points cost is a good thing. Now, I also don't think that they need to be dropping an extra 100 points on the Satan, right? So I do think this is maybe a little light, but it's good, and I think it's definitely going to do nothing but put the game in a better place. The Satan also, they're getting a rule that they cannot teleport in Hypercrypt using their 3-inch Deep Strike stratagem, which is so darn good, because that is very, very abusive. Having a Satan Deep Strike 3 inches away from you in turn 2 using that stratagem is absolute nonsense. So making sure that they can't use that stratagem is a very good balance for the game. Overall, I think this is perfect, basically perfect. There's not many changes I would make to Necrons right now. I think they're actually a very good, non-abusive army that has some really good good rulings on them. And we saw performance from Matt Laura at LVO this weekend that they can absolutely do work. And I don't think it's actually that abusive. However, the Satan are a bit of a problem, as they've always been in this army. So making sure they get rid of that stratagem is a good thing, and increasing their points cost by 10 is a good thing. Although I would probably have gone more like a 20-point increase. But I think this is fine. Let's look at the Dark Eldar. Now, Dark Eldar actually are getting some really interesting changes if this Data Slate is to be believed, which, by the way, I'm not sure I 100% do believe it. Although I do actually think this is more credible than some of the other ones, just from the changes they are actually suggesting. The Grotesque are going down by 5 points per model. Now, this is taking the unit from 75 points to 90 points, and this seems very solid to me. It's going to give the Dark Eldar an actual infantry unit that is relatively tough, but is not going to be broken at all. So, Grotesque at 90 points, when you compare them to some other like 30-point tough guys in the game, it's kind of ludicrous that they were costed at 90 points. So, dropping them down to 75 for a unit of them seems super darn reasonable to me. Now we're going to look at Racks. Racks are going down 2 points per model from 60 to 50. This honestly seems completely unnecessary, seeing as Racks are already very good. And you're seeing them taking an Inari list all over the place. And every single auto list is going to start with 3 units of them anyway. They're already fantastic. I don't think they needed any points reductions. I think it's a little ridiculous. But to be fair, like I don't think I'm going to really complain that Dark Eldar have one unit that's a little bit broken. So I'm okay with it. I would have chosen a different unit to get the reduction for the Dark Eldar. Then we have the Homunculus and Urian Rekarth going down by 10 points, which is okay, fine. I see Urian Rekarth popping up every now and then. Now that we have a decrease on the Grotesque and the Homunculus, maybe that makes a little more sense to start including those. And then the Talus is actually going down by 15 points. So for a unit of 2, instead of paying 180, you're actually going to be paying 150. Now this is a actually game-defining huge change, guys. So Taluses are already pretty fantastic in the Dark Eldar detachment that we have. They're one of actually the few things about Dark Eldar that is fantastic. The other being probably Scourges. Dropping them to 150 means that you're going to be fielding probably 3 units of these guys for 450 points. That is pretty fantastic, and I don't think any Dark Elder player in the world is ever going to be upset by this. I think that might be a little bit of an overcorrection, although, once again, I'm not super concerned about them overcorrecting on Dark Elder right now. Chaos Space Marines are seeing some serious changes, guys, and as they probably need to. Now, this is not the way I would have changed Chaos Space Marines, so I'm going to give you my thoughts on how I would have done it. But let's go ahead and say what this leaked data slate in quotation marks, because once again, guys, this is not official. This is just a leak, although it looks fairly reasonable to me. They changed points and they changed rules. So the rules that they changed: accursed cultists are now unable to take marks. I think that's an awesome change. One of the things, the other way that they would have fixed accursed cultists is by increasing the points by a bunch. I actually think this is not one I had considered, and I think it's a very good change for the accursed cultists. Now that they're no longer taking points, they're actually still quite a cheap, good unit, and you would see them run for certain, but they're not going to have the OP, Profane Zeal access or the Nurgle strats and things. So I actually really do kind of enjoy that change. Now, the other one is going to be a restriction on transports. So you can no longer mix marks in transports. So let's say we have a Rhino that's Mark of Nurgle. You can't load them up with Mark of Undivided Chosen. This is a freaking awesome change, because by giving that Rhino Mark of Nurgle means that they were able to deploy on the line with all the Chosen inside that are going to go wreck you, and they don't care if they go second, because you're not going to be able to shoot it, because they're just going to make the Rhino lone opt. So this is a fantastic change. I had a different thought process. What I would have changed is I would have changed the stratagem to make it an 18-inch lone opt instead of a 12-inch, but this is actually a very very elegant way to solve that problem for CSM. So these are two good rule changes for CSM that I really like. I would have done it a little bit differently. I think I would have changed Profane Zeal, where I would have just said you don't get to reroll wound rolls with it. You can keep the hit rerolls, and it's still very high value, because who wouldn't love a 1 CP stratagem that gives you full hit rerolls, especially with an army that gets to fish for lethal and sustained hits. It would still be a very, very good stratagem. But I would just drop off the wound rerolls in addition to it, because it's the most ludicrously undercosted stratagem in the game at this point, except perhaps Phantasm. But honestly, I think this is even better. But that's what I would have changed. But these two changes are actually very good for the state of the game. Now we had some points changes, and I'm not sure I 100% agree with these, but I basically agree with these points changes. So the Chaos Lord actually goes up a crazy 40 points, from 75 points to 115. This is one that I think is probably a little overdone. I probably would have looked at going like a 30-point increase. The value that the Chaos Lord brings, one unit getting to do Profane Zeal, so one unit of Chosen hits, they get to full reroll hit and wound rolls, and then you go to the next one, and the Chaos Lord says, hey, let's do it for free on this side. It's absolutely unbelievable, especially when you factor in that those two Chaos Lords are going to get flat 3 dev wounds on the turns when they activate it. They can kill anything in the game for 75 points. It was just nonsense. So I think this is a good change. I probably would have only done a 30-point change, but at the same time, since this Data Slate rumor is purporting that they're not going to change Profane Zeal, which I think is the real problem, then I understand it in that context, that they don't want to change the strat, so they're going to do a massive point increase. So in that context, it actually makes sense to me. Then we see Chosen going up by 4 points per model. So instead of being 110 for 5, it's going to be 130. This is fantastic. Chosen are ludicrously undercosted. They're one of the more undercosted units in the entire game. At this point cost, they're still incredibly valuable and incredibly useful. Maybe, however, now you don't start every single list in the game with 2x5 and 1x10. So I think this is a fantastic change for Chaos Space Marines. And if this is real, and if it's not real, Games Workshop, you should pay attention and last minute make that change. And then lastly, the Forge Fiend going up by 20 points to a flat 200. This one I'm totally down for. I'm 100% in alignment with this. This is one that I would have asked for in the Chaos Space Marines data slate in an official one, because Forge Fiends are, even at 200 points, they'll still be the easiestly most efficient gun platforms in the entire game. They're still fan-freaking-tastic, especially with the fact that they can stack their Profane Zeal, or they can be the Nurgle strat, or they can be Nurgle and have exploding 5s when they use their Dark Pact ability. They're still unreasonably good, but now you're actually going to have to pay points for it. When you compare a Forge Fiend at 200 points to a Caladius Gravity Tank at 215, it's not even close. The Forge Fiend is by far and away the most efficient thing that is available in the game right now. So going up is a great thing. Let's look at what they're going to do to what I just mentioned, which was the Adeptus Custodes. Is it enough to save the Custodes? All characters going down by 10 points. Good. Alaris can now be taken in squads of 1. Cool. No, this is not enough for the Custodes. Absolutely not. This is actually really disappointing. However, it is something. So perhaps Custodes can go from, I don't know, like a 40% win rate up to a 44% win rate with this. So it's something. So I'm not really upset by it. Maybe I don't know. So I'm not actually upset by this. But no, this will not fix the Custode problem. But once again, if this is real, I'm sure what Games Workshop is considering is, hey, we have a Custodes book codex coming out soon, so we're not going to really put much time and effort into this. Okay, I get it. Maybe this will make Custodes slightly more fun to play, but you're still not going to see them win any tournaments or do anything impressive. So yeah, not enough, but hey, it's something. Let's look at the next one. We have the Death Guard. Now, this was a really fascinating one to see Death Guard get any changes at all. I think this is an awesome change. This does not change what Death Guard do at all, but it does just tone one of their builds down ever so slightly. So Plague Marines going up 2 points per model from 80 for a 5-man squad to 90. The interesting thing about Death Guard, what a lot of people, myself included, have complaints about is that not only are they an unreasonably hard-hitting army, they're also a horde army at this point. Now, Death Guard aren't necessarily a huge problem in the meta, but if we see the toning down of some of the top dogs, I think you're going to see Death Guard becoming a big problem. Just from the fact that they're really close to being amazing. So just doing a very small, very light touch to them to keep Death Guard in check, I think was a beautiful thing. They didn't touch anything else, and I'm totally down for it. I think this was just absolutely almost perfection when it comes to balancing. So if Games Workshop does adopt this, if this is official, I'm going to be very pleased with this. When we look at AdMech, this was once again one of those just really fantastic suggested changes. Once again, I don't know if this data slate is real, or if this is official, or if it's just a nonsense leak. But whoever made this, if it's not real, this was correct, man. I actually didn't even think about this, so this is a surprise to me to read this. This is a fantastic change. It will probably cause other problems down the line that will then need to be addressed by Games Workshop, because then they're going to have to rebalance points in certain ways. Because we're going to see some combinations when you get to allow those imperatives to affect no man's land objectives. Some of the changes are going to have to be very fascinating, because now some of your units are just going to be a lot tankier than expected, and some of your units are going to be a lot harder hitting than was initially expected. So that's going to cause an entire shift where they're going to have to balance points again in another one. But for right now, I think this is a really elegant solution to the AdMech issue, although I don't think AdMech's nearly as bad as a lot of people say they are either. So I think not giving points cuts was correct, and just maybe doing a little change like this. Perhaps it's a little too good. Time will tell, but for right now, I'm comfortable with that being the experiment. On to Eldar. Now, this is something that I've got a very strong opinion about. I don't think Eldar need to be annihilated. I don't really think they need more sweeping points changes. What they need is rules changes. They're already so elite that you can't point nerf them anymore. So this is very good. Everyone's been asking for it. If this is real, the Necron can no longer charge after using its ability. That is so powerful and so fantastic for the health of the game. That ability breaks the game, and it's just crap. So that's very elegant. The other big change I would have really loved to have seen to Eldar, and once again, I don't know if this is official, would have been to remove twin linked from Night Spinners. The fact that they're twin linked, the fact that they have the best slow ability in the game, plus they can have unreasonable damage output with their full rerolls and fishing for those dev wounds, is nonsense. So I would have removed the twin link keyword from the Night Spinners, but this is the big one right here. The Incarn no longer charging. So I love that change, if that's a real change. Moving on to Leagues of Votan player. If this is a real data slate, every single Leagues of Votan player out there is sighing in relief, because a Sagittar only going up 10 points is honestly, it's someone at Games Workshop loves Votan and still wants to sell them, because Sagittars are ludicrous in the game. They're 9 wounds at T10. They got that 3-up armor save. They hit like a freaking truck. They hit as hard as a Predator Annihilator. That is, 30 points or 20 points more expensive. They probably hit harder, to be honest with you, with that sustained D3 on their massive cannon. And they're a transport, and you can get out after the transport advances. They're very small, so it's very easy to hide them. This is just an unreasonably good unit model. So if this is the only change that Leagues of Votan get, all your Votan players are super happy. I would actually be very upset if this is the only changes League gets, because when you look at their Pioneers, their Pioneers are also ludicrously undercosted. 90 points for what they do is just nonsense. Maybe I'll talk about that in a later video. But, at least they would go up a little bit, which would be kind of nice, I suppose. But honestly, I think it has almost no effect on the play of Leagues of Votan, which I do believe will be a big problem for the game once CSM and Eldar are toned down. Going on to Chaos Demons, if we look at this, 2 two interesting little changes here. One is all big demons are going down by 10 points. Super good. Big demons need a little bit of help. They are struggling right now. So your Bloodthirster, your Greater Unclean One, Changer of not the Changer of Ways, the big birds, and then finally your Keeper Secrets. They are going down by 10 points. I don't know if that applies to Be'lakor and the special named ones also. I think it probably should. But yeah, just a general minus 10 points on all the big boys. I'm here for it. And then Nurglings going up by 10 points per model. Thank you. Nurglings are stupid how good they are. So Nurglings are getting a double whammy here because now that OC0 units can no longer do actions and Nurglings are going up a little bit, it's going to change some of the ally compositions. So in allies now, you're probably not going to see a lot of your other armies just spamming Nurglings everywhere. Although you probably still see them take them a little bit. Like you're definitely going to see them still in Death Guard. You'll probably see them still a little bit in Chaos Knights. But now in Chaos Knights, 13 War Dogs is probably looking a little more attractive than or 14 War Dogs than also running Nurglings. So. And then lastly, we have the Imperial Knights. And the big change for Imperial Knights is the change they need. It's the change they deserve. It's the change they've earned. Reverse those darn bondsman changes, guys. Because honestly, Imperial Knights don't need much. They're actually, all their data sheets are still fine. All their abilities are great. They just have to be able to use their abilities. The fact that the big knights can't benefit from the bondsman is silly. And it's just ridiculous. So if they reverse that, I think Imperial Knights are going to be right on par with everyone else. I think you'll see them jump right back up to close to that 50% win rate, and we'll be very happy. Guys, overall, I don't know if this is real, but if this data slate, if this is the real data slate and this isn't just like a nonsense leak, I got to be honest with you, GW probably did a pretty good job. There's a few things I'm a little disappointed with, but nothing got annihilated here. Nothing got completely rewritten here. Maybe the AdMech change, I'm uncertain how that would affect the game, but most of these are very small changes that seem very, very necessary. The Chaos Space Marines had a pretty big change, but honestly, they need a pretty big change. But the army also wasn't slaughtered. They didn't touch their special rule. They didn't touch most of the units in the army. They're just gonna have to pivot a little bit, and they're just gonna, with these changes, their Chaos Space Marines will essentially just have to choose what they want to do instead of just being able to do absolutely everything free of charge. So, which I think is good for the game. So overall, this would be freaking awesome. There's a few other changes I would personally suggest, but hey, man, who knows? Anyway, this was just for entertainment because we don't know if this is real anyway. We'll catch you later this week when we do find out. I'm going to be going live and I'm talking about all the actual data slate changes when GW posts them. Until next time, crump on.